The darkness will devour them all, she says. The night that never ends. She talks of prophecies. A hero reborn in the sea. Living dragons hatched from dead stone. She speaks of signs and swear they point to me. I never asked for this, no more than I asked to be king. Yet dare I disregard her? He ground his teeth. We do not choose our destinies, yet we must. We must do our duty, no? Great or small, we must do our duty. Are any of us born with a destiny? In A Song of Ice and Fire, characters may have everything about their lives determined by birth, whether that leads them to becoming a peasant or a king. No one exemplifies this more than Stannis, cursed to live in his brother's shadow through no fault of his own. Being number 2 his whole life, his dedication time and time again amounted to nothing, until he took the burden of leadership as his duty. Stannis Baratheon may be the trailblazing savior of the Seven Kingdoms, or a puppet under the strings of fate, but either way he's steadfast in his duty, ready to sacrifice whatever it takes for his kingdom. A lot of Stannis' character in the present began to form as a child. With the importance of firstborn sons in Westeros, Stannis and Renly lived under the shadow of Robert. While Renly would react to this by seeking attention and becoming louder and bolder, Stannis would shrink back and become quiet and cold. At a young age, he and Robert watched their parents die in a shipwreck, giving Stannis a crisis of faith. Since the Seven were powerless to help him then, he doubts their presence up to the current story. All this tragedy in his childhood would leave him solemn and joyless, not helped by the fact that he received the least love out of his brothers. One important detail about his childhood to me is the story of his hawk, Proudwing. He found the hawk injured and nursed it back to health, only for it to still underperform in hunting. His hawk was no match for Robert's, so he was told to get rid of it, declaring to Davos that he'll try a new red hawk. This short story displays his lack of compassion and stern pragmatism that came from his isolated childhood, and how he rarely struggles to get rid of people he doesn't see as valuable. However, Proudwing was a goshawk, who are known to hunt for perches and stay in tree canopies unlike other hawks. Stannis nursed his hawk back to perfect health, but failed to see its value because of his ego and spite for Robert. Stannis would choose to support Robert over his king during the rebellion, joining forces with him in battle. He would seize the island of Dragonstone and force the Targaryens out of Westeros, a key victory in the rebellion. Even after, during the Greyjoys' rebellion, he'd be the one to take down the Iron Fleet. Yet his reward for this would be Dragonstone, rather than the wealthier Storm's End. Robert meant this to show Stannis was the heir to the throne, since most Targaryen kings ruled there. Stannis would see it as a slight, however, being sent to the dismal and dark throne as a way to be put below even the younger Renly. An unknown source would tell him about Cersei's children being illegitimate, according to Varys. This would lead to him working with Jon Arryn to confirm the secret before Jon is killed. Stannis would assume that Cersei killed him, leaving to Dragonstone with resentment for the corrupt politics of King's Landing, which he would carry on as he wishes to root out the corruption and kill many of those in power. In Dragonstone, he would be left alone in his castle to brood and hatch a plan to take the throne, which comes to fruition when Robert is killed. The only person who would try to love the young Stannis was Maester Cresson, who had a soft spot for him, since he felt like Stannis needed love the most. He dedicated most of his life to raising and serving Stannis, yet that would be put to the test as Melisandre arrives on Dragonstone. Cresson sees Melisandre as a bad influence on Stannis, formulating a plan to poison her. While we see this chapter from his perspective, we can't imagine that Melisandre may have had a clue about the events from her powers. Stannis tries to let Cresson rest and doesn't invite him to the dinner, thinking that this may prevent him from trying to kill her. But as he stumbles into the dinner anyway, Stannis humiliates him and makes him put on the jester's helmet, before letting Melisandre kill him. You can see here that Stannis may have still had some connection to Cresson since he was given a chance, but Stannis is quick to turn on people, and will kill and replace him without a second thought when he becomes a challenge. The knowledge of Jon Arryn, Melisandre's influence, and his constant feeling of spite motivate him to begin his conquest, where he meets Renly outside Storm's End. They represent complete opposites in their approach, with Renly only caring about theatrics and charisma, while Stannis can only understand straightforward duty and purpose. In their parley, Stannis refuses to submit to his younger brother again, deciding to battle him the next morning. But as Stannis thinks he's drawing his sword, Renly holds out a peach. Renly's hand slid inside his cloak. Stannis saw and reached at once for the hilt of his sword, but before he could draw steel, his brother produced a peach. "Would you like one, brother?" Renly asked, smiling. "From Highgarden. You've never tasted anything so sweet, I promise you." He took a bite. Juice ran from the corner of his mouth. "I did not come here to eat fruit." Stannis was fuming. "My lords," Catelyn said, "we ought to be hammering out the terms of an alliance, not trading taunts." "A man should never refuse to taste a peach," Renly said as he tossed the stone away. "He may never get the chance again. Life is short, Stannis. Remember what the Starks say. Winter's coming." He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. While Stannis has steadfastly committed himself to duty and pragmatism, Renly offers him an alternative. Peaches throughout the story are symbols of simple pleasures, with characters like Asha and Robert having fond memories characterized by the peaches they ate. He gives Stannis the option to find pleasure in simple things outside of his narrow worldview. Stannis has never been satisfied with the things he's been given, comparing everything to his brothers and wanting to feed his ego. But Stannis cannot accept the peach, just as he cannot change his perception of the world, and he chooses to battle with his brother. But before the battle, Melisandre sends a shadow assassin to kill Renly. While this may or may not have been done with Stannis' knowledge, he's racked with guilt to have his brother killed in such a dishonorable way. But either way, he's able to prevent more deaths from a larger conflict, setting him on his course to King's Landing. Stannis would courageously battle the Lannisters at King's Landing, taking heavy losses from the wildfire, but gaining the lead for a while. But the Tyrell forces arrive, with Garland dressed as Renly to cause panic within Stannis' troops and win the battle. Once again, Stannis would pay the price for his cold personality, not only failing to negotiate troops within the Stormlands, which would have helped his efforts, but failing to control Renly's troops, especially near the end. Most have never even seen a battle, and are only fighting because Stannis killed their king. Stannis fails to use them effectively since he can't command them as easily as his opponents, and when fake Renly shows up, he loses all control of them, forcing his retreat. When Stannis regroups with his shattered army at Dragonstone, he's put in a difficult position where he has to rethink his goals. Melisandre requests to sacrifice Edric Storm, who has Robert's blood, but Davos advises against it. Davos to Stannis is a voice of reason, the counterbalance to Melisandre's influence. While Melisandre arranges for Edric's sacrifice, Davos ships him away secretly, believing that a king who cannot protect his own people is no king. In this time period, Stannis reconsidered his purpose, opening his eyes not just to the conflict in Westeros, but to the march of the others, knowing all political victory means nothing if the long night comes. He dedicates himself to protecting the people of Westeros to earn their favor, sailing out to the Wall to prepare for battle. It is not a question of wanting. The throne is mine as Robert's heir. That is law. After me, it must pass to my daughter, unless Celis should finally give me a son. I am king. Once do not enter into it. I have a duty to my daughter, to the realm, even to Robert. He loved me but little, I know, yet he was my brother. The Lannister woman gave him horns and made a motley fool of him. She may have murdered him as well as she murdered Jon Arryn and Ned Stark. For such crimes there must be justice, starting with Cersei and her abominations, but only starting. I mean to scour that court clean, as Robert should have done after the Trident. I think the greatness about Stannis' character writing is how ambiguous his inner thoughts are. While he claims honor and his duty are reasons for wanting the throne, he's also fueled by spite and disdain for the people of King's Landing. Yet while he changes his motivations after his loss, he still says that he's doing it all to be viewed in a better light by those in Westeros. Above that, we know Melisandre has been influencing him down a darker path than other people, with her usually being the one to campaign for sacrifice and violence. He stands out as one of the best morally great characters in the series this way, with each reader seeing him differently. Some may see a just and honorable savior, and others a corrupt and ruthless villain. As he arrives at the Wall, he takes out Mance Rayder's forces and joins Jon for the time being. This is especially ironic considering the difference between Mance and Stannis. As I talk about in my Mance video, his strength is in his diplomacy and skill at uniting people, with his success not coming from his strength, but being able to wield massive groups of people to the best of their ability. Nevertheless, Stannis smashes through his troops, leaving Mance and his army decimated while taking control of the Wall. Here he would meet Jon Snow, and they share a type of unspoken bond throughout his stay. Both are leaders who were strict with duty and felt left out of their families as children. Yet Jon leads in many different ways than Stannis. While Jon is caught between both sides of the conflict, Stannis is unrelenting and will break before he bends, potentially to his downfall. Stannis, at this point in the story, is marching down to Winterfell to battle the Boltons and Freys for the North. While he meets his end here in the show, I don't doubt Stannis' planning, and many have speculated about how he could utilize the snowstorm, weirwood burning, and trickery to spend most of Ramsay's army to a watery grave. But I think the larger challenge lies in what he does with the North. While he has helped them out, burning the weirwood and simply not being a Stark will leave many of the Northmen hesitant to help him conquer down south. With the impending threat of the others, Stannis must look north, returning to the Night Fort and working with the Night's Watch to fight off the Long Night. I never asked for this crown. Gold is cold and heavy on the head, but so long as I am the king, I have a duty. If I must sacrifice one child to the flames to save 1,000,000 from the dark, sacrifice is never easy, Davos, or it is no true sacrifice. One of the most divisive aspects of Stannis' character is whether or not he will burn his daughter Shireen. While Martin has confirmed that she will die in interviews, many have said that it could be Melisandre or Selyse who would burn her without Stannis' knowledge. But I believe it will happen in a different way than expected. While many may think her sacrifice will happen to survive the snowstorm, I think Stannis will be placed in a much more dire situation at the Wall. He may become the 999th commander, and be forced to make difficult decisions when faced with a long night, whether or not they help him prevail. And while he loves his daughter, there's no more dire circumstance than when the fate of Westeros is up in the air. But either way, he's failed to assimilate with the North, burning weirwoods for his false gods and breaking the vows in the Night's Watch, which could cause unforeseen consequences. While he has done a lot for the North, breaking the taboos of the Night's Watch could be enough to turn them against him. Should he return to become Lord Commander from Winterfell, he'll probably keep hold of his claim to the crown and over the North. If the Starks make their return to the North, they may have enough power to kill him for his crimes. And Mance as well has his own plan for his people, with his main enemy being the man who decimated him in battle at the Wall. Even though he may put up a good fight against the others, I think he's crossed too many lines for many of the characters to accept his rule. The gathering gloom put Bran in mind of another of Old Nan's stories, that of Night's King. He had been the 13th man to lead the Night's Watch, she said, a warrior who knew no fear. And that was the fault in him, she would add, for all men must know fear. A woman was his downfall. A woman glimpsed him from atop the wall, with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Fearing nothing, he chased her and caught her and loved her, though her skin was cold as ice. And when he gave his seed to her, he gave his soul as well. He brought her back to the Night Fort and proclaimed her a queen and himself her king, and with strange sorceries he bound his sworn brothers to his will. For 13 years they had ruled, Night's King and his corpse queen, till finally the Stark of Winterfell and Jorah Mormont of the Wildlings had joined to free the Watch from his bondage. After his fall, when it was found he had been sacrificing to the others, all records of Night's King had been destroyed, his very name forbidden. I think one of the most important parallels for his character is the Night's King, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. It's no coincidence that Stannis rules the same castle the Night King once did, as well as breaking the code of the Night's Watch for their gain. But Melisandre is very similar to the Corpse Queen, while she uses fire instead of ice. They're both corruptions to the king, using their soul to create magic and leading them to battle and royalty. This is ironic, considering Melisandre has so much terror for the cold in the others, yet she perfectly represents their queen. These strong parallels show that Stannis may have a Night King-like role in the future, if not directly commanding them, failing to stop them at the Wall. Yet in both of these stories, the King beyond the Wall and the Stark King may manage to take him down and restore the Night's Watch. If there's any theme to the whole series, it's that conflict is not as simple as we think, and resolving conflict means being able to see both sides. Stannis and Melisandre reflect the opposite of this, with Stannis being unyielding to a fault, and Melisandre, whose faith makes her see the world as black and white, will see that she's the perfect reflection of the Corpse Queen, despite being on different sides. Having Mance and Jon take him down to parallel the downfall of the Night's King would be a thematically resonant ending to his character. Having the bridge between ice and fire, Jon, be the one to take down Stannis, especially with the similarity they saw in one another at the Wall. With this, the dividing lines between free folk in Westeros, ice and fire, would be broken, and the more effective kings of Westeros would cement their rule. Stannis' character writing stands out in the story for many reasons, but especially because of the complex motivations behind his character. While he holds honor and duty so strongly, he also selfishly desires power because of his spite and lasting childhood feelings of competition and inadequacy. In his character, the series makes a man who can be seen from many different perspectives, whether he's just or cruel. But the end of the story may push him to his limit, testing his resolve and willingness to sacrifice for the sake of his purpose. But if good still manages to prevail in this story, Stannis' end will mark the end of his tragedy and the start of a new era for Westeros.